I still remember the sound of the rain that morning. Soft at first, like a whisper against the window. Then it turned into something heavier, colder, like the sky was crying for me before I even knew why. My son, Daniel, was standing by the door with his wife, Emily, both dressed neatly, their suitcases by the car. I was sitting on the old armchair by the window, the same one where I'd rocked him to sleep decades ago. "Mom," he began softly, "you know we love you, right? When someone starts a sentence like that, it never ends well." I nodded, clutching the small blanket on my lap. My hands have aged faster than my heart. "Of course, dear. What's wrong?" Emily looked away. She always does when the truth feels too heavy. Daniel cleared his throat. "It's just the house. It's getting too big for you. You need care, Mom. You need people around you. We found a lovely place. Sunny Pines. It's just outside town. Sunny Pines." The name sounded cheerful enough to hide the heartbreak behind it. "You're sending me away?" I asked, the words trembling. No, it's not like that," Emily interrupted quickly. "You'll have friends your age, games, meals, nurses. It'll be fun." Fun. That's what people call loneliness when they don't want to feel guilty. I looked at Daniel. My son. The little boy who once clung to my skirt when he had nightmares. The one I worked 3 jobs for. The one I skipped meals for so he could eat. Now he couldn't even look me in the eyes. When the car arrived, I asked to walk around the house one last time. My steps echoed through the empty rooms. The kitchen smelled faintly of cinnamon and coffee, my Sunday ritual for decades. The photo frames on the wall were gone. Emily must have packed them. Maybe for me. Maybe not. I paused by Daniel's childhood room. The toy truck I'd kept on the shelf was still there. Dusty, faded, forgotten. Like me. "Mom, we're getting late," Daniel called. I took one last look around and whispered to the walls, "Thank you for being my home." The drive to Sunny Pines was quiet. Only the rain spoke. When we arrived, a smiling nurse greeted us. Her name tag read Mara. She had kind eyes, but I wasn't ready for kindness. Not yet. As Daniel signed the forms, I tried to memorize his face. The curve of his jaw, the slight gray in his hair. I wanted to remember him just like that, before resentment took over my heart. He hugged me once. A polite, distant hug. "You'll be fine, Mom," he said. I smiled, because that's what mothers do. We smile even when our hearts are breaking. The door closed behind him. I watched his car disappear down the long driveway, and that's when it hit me. I wasn't going home again. I sat on the narrow bed, my suitcase untouched, and whispered to the silence, "You'll regret this, Daniel. Someday, you'll regret this." Outside, the rain finally stopped. But inside me, the storm had just begun. I thought I'd never get used to the smell. A mix of disinfectant, old wood, and something faintly metallic. Maybe sorrow. That's what the halls of Sunny Pines smelled like. The first few days felt like a blur. Nurses in soft shoes moving quickly, trays clattering, the distant hum of a television nobody watched. Everyone had their own rhythm here, their own way of pretending they weren't waiting. Waiting for someone to visit. Waiting for time to pass. Waiting for the end. My room was small but clean. One bed, a window facing the courtyard, and a nightstand where I placed Daniel's photo. I used to look at it before sleeping, as if staring long enough would make him call. But days passed. He didn't. Mara, the nurse who welcomed me, tried her best to make me feel comfortable. "You'll love it here, Mrs. Carter," she said. "Everyone's like family, family." Such a beautiful word, until yours decides to forget you exist. On my 3rd day, I met Evelyn. She was sitting by the window in the lounge, knitting something that didn't look like anything yet. She looked up when I approached. "New face," she said, smiling faintly. "You'll learn soon enough. Never trust the tea here." "It tastes like warm regret." I laughed, and it surprised me. I hadn't laughed in days. Evelyn became my first friend. She'd been at Sunny Pines for 2 years. "My daughter visits every Sunday," she told me proudly. Then she paused, her eyes lowering. "Well, she used to. We talked for hours. About our children, our youth. The men we once loved and lost. I learned that everyone here carried a story that never got finished. There was Mr. Hensley, who used to be a piano teacher. His fingers still moved like they remembered music. Ruth, who spoke to her late husband every night as if he were sitting right beside her. And Harold, who never said a word to anyone but always left a chocolate on each person's tray at breakfast. They were strangers, but they felt more like home than my own family. Yet, something about this place didn't sit right. It began with small things. The sound of footsteps in the hallway after midnight, doors closing when nobody was there, a flicker in the lights that always happened around 3 a.m. One night I woke up to whispers, not loud but urgent, coming from the nurses' station down the hall. I got up and quietly peeked out. Mara and another nurse were talking, their faces tense. "Are you sure she signed it?" the other nurse asked. Mara nodded. "Yes, but she doesn't remember." "They never do." I frowned, confused. Who were they talking about? The next morning, one of the residents, Mr. Hensley, was gone. The staff said he'd been transferred to another facility. No goodbye, no visit, no reason. When I mentioned it to Evelyn, she looked uneasy. "That's the third one this month," she whispered. "And every time they say the same thing." "Transferred?" I asked. She nodded. "But no one ever hears from them again." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the squeak of the hallway cart and the soft hum of the elevator. Sunny Pines wasn't just a place to grow old. It was a place where people vanished quietly, without questions. A few days later, Mara came to my room with a clipboard. "Mrs. Carter," she said gently, "we just need your signature for some standard documents." "It's routine." I looked down at the paper. The words were small, legal, too small for my tired eyes. Something about asset management and long-term care authorization. My gut twisted. I remembered what the other nurse said that night. They never do. "Can I read this later?" I asked, forcing a smile. "My glasses aren't working well." She hesitated, then nodded. "Of course. I'll bring it tomorrow." After she left, I sat in silence for a long time. The walls felt like they were listening. I wasn't crazy. Something was happening here. Something the others were too tired or too afraid to question. So that night, I made a decision. If my son had left me here to fade away, then I'd do the opposite. I'd wake up. I'd watch. I'd learn. I started keeping a small notebook hidden in the lining of my pillowcase. Every strange noise, every missing person, every nurse conversation, I wrote it all down. Day by day, the pattern became clear. People were disappearing only after signing papers, and the ones who transferred had no families visiting anymore. Sunny Pines wasn't just a nursing home. It was a business, a well-oiled machine feeding off forgotten souls. But what they didn't know was that one of those souls still had fire left in her. Days turned into weeks, and I learned that in a place like Sunny Pines, time doesn't flow. It just circles around you like a vulture. Breakfast, pills, TV, silence, repeat. But behind that quiet routine, I was watching, listening, every sound after midnight, every whispered conversation between the staff. I collected them like breadcrumbs. One evening, while most of the residents were watching an old black and white movie in the common room, I slipped out quietly and walked toward the east corridor, the one marked staff only. I'd noticed that every time someone transferred, the nurses used that corridor. They'd vanish into the office at the end of it, carrying papers and sealed envelopes. My heart thudded like it hadn't in years. Maybe fear, maybe purpose. The hallway was dim, lit only by the flicker of an exit sign. I could hear the low buzz of the vending machine nearby. My old slippers brushed against the tile floor as I moved slowly, careful not to make a sound. The office door was slightly ajar. I peeked inside. Empty. The faint hum of a computer screen filled the silence. Papers lay scattered across the desk. And there, half hidden under a clipboard, was a folder labeled Resident Status Transfers. I hesitated. My hands trembled as I reached for it. The paper was cold. Inside were several pages, names typed neatly in columns, dates beside them, and strange signatures under a section marked Property Reallocation, Mr. Hensley, Ruth, Harold, all gone. And then my breath caught. At the bottom of the next page, Carter Lillian, scheduled October 12th, my name. That was only 2 weeks away. My knees went weak. I had to grip the desk to stay upright. They were taking something from us. Not just our dignity, but our lives, our possessions, our identities. I thought of that document Mara had brought earlier, the one I refused to sign. Asset management. It wasn't about care. It was about control. I shoved the folder back exactly as I found it and quietly slipped away, my pulse hammering in my ears. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, tracing cracks in the paint that looked like old scars. Around 2 a.m., Evelyn shuffled into my room, wrapped in her blanket. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. I hesitated, then whispered, "Evelyn." "Have you ever signed anything here?" "Papers, I mean," she frowned. "Oh, yes. When I first arrived. They said it was just for insurance purposes. Why?" I took a deep breath. "Because I think they're taking things from us. Our houses, our money. Maybe worse." She stared at me for a long moment, then shook her head. "That can't be, Lily. It's a care home, not a crime ring." But I could see doubt flicker in her eyes. The next morning, Evelyn wasn't at breakfast. Her chair by the window sat empty, her half-finished knitting on the armrest. When I asked the nurse where she was, Mara smiled too quickly. "Oh, she's been transferred to a specialized facility, just like Mr. Hensley, just like the others." That afternoon, I went back to my room and locked the door. My hands shook as I opened my little notebook and added another entry. Evelyn, Oct. 3, gone. Transferred. Last seen talking to me. My name next. For the first time I cried. Not just for Evelyn. Not for myself. But for all of us, the forgotten ones, the old souls tucked away in neat little rooms while the world moved on without us. I had to do something. But what could a 79-year-old woman do against a system like this? Then I remembered something Daniel once said when he was little, after standing up to a bully at school. "Mom, you don't have to be strong. You just have to be brave for one moment longer than them." That night, I decided to be brave for one moment longer. I would find proof. I would find out where Evelyn and the others really went. So the next day, when Mara came by with my medication, I smiled sweetly and said, "Mara, dear, would you mind fetching me a cup of tea? My throat feels dry." The moment she left, I poured the pills into a tissue and hid them under my pillow. Then I crept back toward the east corridor, this time following the faint sound of the elevator that led to the basement. The doors opened with a soft ding. Cold air met my face as I stepped inside. The basement smelled like bleach and paper. And something else. Something older. I found another office door. This one marked storage authorized personnel only. Inside were metal filing cabinets and boxes stacked high. Each labeled with a resident's name. My heart froze. Every box had personal belongings. Watches, jewelry, letters, photographs. Lives packed away like forgotten memories. I saw Evelyn's name. I opened her box. Inside were her knitting needles, and a sealed envelope addressed to her daughter. It had never been mailed. Tears blurred my vision, and then I heard it, footsteps. I turned off the light and hid behind a cabinet, holding my breath. 2 voices. One of them was Mara's. "Carter's next," Mara said softly. "She hasn't signed yet. We'll have to push it through soon." My fingers clenched around Evelyn's letter. When the door closed and their voices faded, I stepped out, my knees trembling. I looked around one last time, then took the envelope and slipped back upstairs, unseen. That night, I sat by my window, holding Evelyn's letter in my lap, the moonlight spilling over the paper. She never got to send it. But maybe I didn't know how yet. But I would. And when I did, Sunny Pines would never be the same again. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Evelyn's face, her gentle smile, her unfinished knitting, her name printed neatly on that cold white folder. Morning came like a thief, stealing the safety of darkness. The staff moved through the halls as if nothing had happened. Breakfast was the same. The watery oatmeal. The fake cheer. The hum of the television in the corner playing some old sitcom laugh track that felt cruelly out of place. But inside, I had changed. I wasn't going to let Evelyn's story end like this. At lunch, I slipped the envelope she had written into the pocket of my cardigan. It was addressed in her shaky handwriting, to my daughter, Clara. The postmark was blank. No one had ever sent it. All day I watched the nurses looking for an opening. Sunny Pines wasn't a prison, but it might as well have been. We weren't allowed to leave the property without family permission, and Daniel hadn't called once. Still, there was one chance. On Thursdays, a delivery man came to drop off supplies and pick up outgoing mail from the front desk. If I could reach him before Mara saw me, maybe Evelyn's words would finally find their way home. That afternoon, I sat in the lounge pretending to read. My hands were steady, but my heart wasn't. When the delivery truck pulled up outside, I rose slowly, clutching my cane. "Just stretching my legs," I told Mara with a smile. She nodded absent-mindedly, busy with her clipboard. I walked past the reception desk, pretending not to notice the guard by the door. My knees trembled, but I forced each step. When the delivery man turned to leave, I called softly, "Excuse me, young man." He looked up. "Yes, ma'am?" "I was wondering if you could do me a little favor," I said, lowering my voice. "My hands aren't steady enough for the mailbox. Could you send this letter for me? It's very important." He hesitated, eyeing the envelope. Then he smiled kindly. "Of course." When he tucked it into his bag, I whispered, "Thank you." That night, I prayed. I hadn't done that in years, not since Daniel was a child. But I prayed Evelyn's letter would reach her daughter, that someone, somewhere, would finally see what was happening in this place. 3 days passed. Then everything changed. It started with chaos. The usually quiet halls filled with murmurs. A visitor at the front desk, a young woman angry and crying. From my doorway, I heard her voice echo down the hall. "Where's my mother? Where's Evelyn Moore?" I froze. Evelyn's daughter. The nurses tried to calm her down, but she wasn't leaving without answers. She waved the letter in the air, the one I'd sent. "This came 3 weeks late. What have you done with her?" Residents peeked from their rooms. The air felt electric. Finally, the director appeared, a tall man with slick hair and a practiced smile. "Miss Moore, please come to my office. There must be some misunderstanding." They closed the door behind them. An hour later, the young woman stormed out, tears streaking her face. "You'll all pay for this," she shouted. "I'm going to the police!" The entire facility buzzed with whispers after that. Some said Evelyn had died weeks ago. Others said she'd been moved for treatment, but no one knew for sure. That night, Mara came to my room, her face tight with tension. "Mrs. Carter," she said softly, "did you send a letter recently?" I feigned confusion. "A letter?" "Oh dear, my memory's not what it used to be." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she sighed. "You're not as forgetful as you pretend, are you?" For the first time, her tone wasn't sweet. It was sharp, cold. When she left, I locked my door. My hands shook as I pressed my ear to the wall, listening to the muffled sound of voices in the hallway. "She knows something," Mara was saying. "Should we notify Daniel Carter?" My blood ran cold. "Daniel?" I pressed closer, hardly breathing. "Her son arranged the placement himself," another voice said, one I didn't recognize. "He handled her paperwork. Said to keep him updated if she caused trouble." I staggered back. My son Daniel knew. He hadn't just left me here. He had arranged it. Suddenly, every kind gesture, every promise he made, felt like a blade twisting in my chest. My mind raced back to the documents, the signatures, the asset management forms, the property reallocation. It all made sense now. He didn't put me here because he cared. He put me here because he wanted everything I had left. That night, I sat by the window, watching the wind bend the trees outside. The moon was pale, like a ghost watching over the forgotten. I whispered to the darkness, "You took everything from me, Daniel. But you'll regret this. I promise you, my boy. You'll regret it." The next morning, I woke up with a plan. If Evelyn's letter could shake the walls of Sunny Pines, then maybe my truth could burn it down. The next morning began with the sound of birds outside my window, faint, distant, and mocking. It's funny how nature keeps moving forward, even when your world stops. I sat by the window, staring at the framed photo of Daniel on my nightstand. His smile, the same smile I'd once lived for, now looked like a stranger's. I thought back to all the sacrifices. How I worked double shifts at the diner when his father died. How I saved every dollar to send him to college. How I sold my wedding ring to pay his tuition when the scholarship didn't come through. And now, the boy who used to kiss my cheek goodnight had sold me too. That day, I noticed Mara acting differently. She didn't meet my eyes. The nurses whispered more than usual. Something was shifting. After lunch, I saw the director's assistant walking toward my room with a man in a suit. He carried a briefcase and looked like the kind of person who smiled only when there was money involved. I quickly closed my eyes and pretended to nap as they entered. "Mrs. Carter's file is complete," the assistant whispered. "Her assets have been liquidated per her son's authorization." The man replied, "Good. The paperwork will be finalized by Monday. Once the transfer is confirmed, the facility will receive the remaining commission." My heart stopped. I held my breath until they left. Then I sat up, shaking. Liquidated. Commission. They were selling my home, the house I built, the one Daniel grew up in, and sharing the profit, and my son had signed it all away. I couldn't cry. I couldn't even breathe properly. The pain was too deep for tears. Instead, I felt something else rise inside me. Not anger. Not despair. Resolve. I'd been quiet long enough. That night, I waited until the halls were dark. Then I took out my notebook and began writing. Everything. Dates, conversations, names, every detail about Sunny Pines, the missing residents, the falsified transfers, and my son's involvement. It was my own confession, but not of guilt, of truth. The next morning, I asked Mara if I could use the phone to call my pastor. She hesitated, then agreed, probably thinking an old woman praying wouldn't cause trouble. But I didn't call any pastor. I called my old neighbor, Grace Thompson. She'd lived across from me for 40 years. A sharp woman with a memory like a hawk and a tongue that could slice steel. When she answered, I could barely hold my voice steady. "Grace, it's Lily! Lily? Oh my God, where have you been? Your house is empty, for sale signs everywhere. Daniel said you moved to Florida. The lie came easily for him, didn't it?" "Grace," I whispered, "listen to me. I'm at a place called Sunny Pines. It's not what it seems. They're taking people's money, and Daniel's part of it. He forged my signature." There was silence. Then Grace's voice hardened. "That snake. Don't worry, Lily, I'll fix this. I need you to do something for me," I said. "There's a notebook under my old kitchen sink, a black one. Get it, and if anything happens to me, give it to the police." She promised she would. After I hung up, a strange calm washed over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had control again, even if only a little. But Sunny Pines didn't like losing control. That evening, 2 staff members came into my room unannounced. "Routine inspection," one of them said. They searched my drawers, my closet, even under my mattress. They didn't find the notebook. I'd hidden it inside the vent behind my bed, the only place they'd never check. Later, Mara came in. Her smile was gone. "You've been making phone calls, Mrs. Carter," she said softly. I didn't respond. "Your son's coming tomorrow," she continued. "We'll discuss your future then, my future. How strange that everyone else thought they owned it." When she left, I sat in the dark for a long time. I thought about Daniel, the little boy who once held my hand at his father's funeral, whispering, I'll take care of you, Mama. What happened to that boy? What kind of world turns love into greed? The next day, I heard his voice before I saw him. Mom! I turned slowly. He stood there in a gray suit, polished, confident, and nervous. Daniel, I said quietly. How's my house? He froze. Mom, I was going to tell you. Tell me what? That you forged my signature? That you sold everything your father and I built? He ran a hand through his hair. Mom, please, you don't understand. The bills were piling up. Emily lost her job. We had to? I interrupted. My voice shook. You had to sell your mother like an old piece of furniture? He looked away. You wouldn't have survived alone. You're better off here, better off, in a place where people vanished in the night. You betrayed me, Daniel, I whispered. And one day you'll wish you hadn't. He exhaled sharply. You've always been dramatic. Maybe you really do belong here. That was the last straw. I stood up, leaning on my cane. My voice was low, steady. You may own my house, Daniel, but you don't own me. And when the truth comes out, and it will, you'll regret every word you just said. He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out without saying goodbye. The door closed. I heard his footsteps fade down the hall, and I smiled, because for the first time I wasn't afraid anymore. The day after Daniel's visit, Sunny Pines felt colder. The air seemed heavier, like the building itself knew what was coming. The nurses smiled, but their eyes darted away. Mara passed me in the hall without a word. I knew she'd told the director about our argument. And I knew they were watching me. But what they didn't know was that Grace was already moving faster than any of them. 3 days had passed since our phone call. I didn't hear back, but I trusted her. She'd always been the kind of woman who didn't just gossip. She acted. That morning, around 10 a.m., the front door of Sunny Pines opened. Not for a delivery truck, not for visitors. For police officers, 2 of them. One young, one older. They flashed badges, and the entire staff froze. I was sitting in the common room, pretending to read a magazine when I heard the words that made my heart leap. We're here to investigate reports of financial fraud and elder abuse. The color drained from the director's face. Mara tried to smile, but her hands were shaking. I watched quietly as they escorted the director into his office. Whispers flew through the halls. The residents looked around, confused but hopeful. After an hour, one of the officers stepped out, holding a familiar object, my black notebook. Grace had done it. Later, the younger officer approached me. Mrs. Carter? He asked gently. Yes? I believe this belongs to you. He handed me the notebook. Your neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, brought this to the station. She said you asked her to. I nodded slowly, my throat tight. Did she tell you everything? He smiled faintly. She told us enough. The records you kept, names, dates, conversations, it's solid evidence. We've already found several forged signatures, including yours. I felt tears sting my eyes. For months I'd been dismissed, silenced, ignored. Now, finally, someone was listening. The officer continued. We'll need to take statements from the staff. And from you, if you're able. I smiled softly. Oh, I'm more than able, son. I've been waiting for this day. They set up a temporary office in the lounge. Residents gathered in corners, whispering, peeking through doorways. For the first time, Sunny Pines didn't feel like a tomb. It felt alive. Mara was called in for questioning. Her voice echoed faintly down the hall. I didn't know. The director handled the paperwork. I just followed orders. But I remembered the nights she whispered in the hallway, the way she'd tried to make me sign those papers. She knew enough. When she came out, her face was pale. She didn't look at me. Then came the director. His voice was low and angry, but I could hear the fear in it. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? He snapped. These were private agreements, legal. But the officer simply replied, Legal doesn't mean moral, sir, especially when signatures are forged. By the evening, the facility was in chaos. The staff avoided eye contact. Rumors spread like wildfire, police files, hidden bank accounts, missing residents whose families had never been notified. But amidst all the commotion, something inside me began to ache. Daniel, he hadn't called. He hadn't shown up. Maybe he thought he could still get away with it. Maybe he thought I wouldn't survive the storm he started. That night, I sat by my window again. The moonlight stretched across my bed like an old friend, and then something moved outside. A figure, tall, familiar. Daniel. I froze as he walked toward the side door, talking to one of the staff members. I couldn't hear them, but I saw money change hands. He wasn't here to apologize. He was here to clean up the mess. My heart pounded. I waited until he entered the east corridor, the same hallway that led to the office and the basement. Then I followed. The hall was dimly lit, the silence thick. I kept my steps soft, my cane steady. I saw him through the glass window of the director's office, rifling through papers, his face tense. He was trying to destroy evidence. I pushed the door open. "Looking for something, Daniel?" He froze, the papers still in his hands. "Mom, you shouldn't be here." "Oh, I think I should." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand. They said it was just paperwork, that it was for your safety." "Stop lying," I said quietly. "You forged my signature. You sold my home. You left me here to rot." He took a step closer, his voice trembling. "I was desperate. Emily's debts? I cut him off. You were greedy. There's a difference." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "You don't know what it's like trying to raise a family these days. Everything costs. Don't you dare blame your family for your sins," I said. My voice came out sharper than I expected. "You had a choice. You could have asked for help. I would have given you everything, willingly. But you chose betrayal." He slumped into the chair, head in his hands. For the first time, I saw not the son I raised, but a man hollowed out by his own mistakes. "I ruined everything," he whispered. I took a deep breath, the pain in my chest heavy but clear. "Yes, you did. But this isn't about me anymore. It's about all of them." I pointed toward the hallway where the residents slept, the forgotten souls of Sunny Pines. The door opened behind us. The police entered. Daniel looked up, startled. One officer stepped forward. "Mr. Carter, we need you to come with us." He didn't resist. He just looked at me. And for the first time in years, I saw my little boy again, lost and ashamed. "Mom?" "I'm sorry," he whispered as they led him away. I didn't answer. I couldn't. When the door closed, I finally let the tears fall. Quiet, steady, unstoppable. I wasn't crying for the house or the money or even for myself. I was crying for the years I'd spent believing love was unbreakable, only to learn that even love can rust when it's left out in the rain. But one thing was certain. I wasn't broken anymore. Sunny Pines was no longer a prison. It was my battlefield. And I had won. The next morning, the sun rose brighter than it had in months. For the first time, Sunny Pines wasn't draped in gloom. There were reporters outside, cameras flashing, people asking questions, not about bingo nights or holiday. Donations, but about the truth. Elderly, exploitation scandal exposed at local care facility. That's what the headline said. The police had found everything, the forged documents, the missing funds, the illegal property transfers. The director and several staff members were arrested. And Daniel, my son, was listed among the accomplices. Grace came to visit me that day. Her smile was soft but proud. "You did it, Clara," she said, squeezing my hand. "You made them listen," I nodded slowly. "No, we did it." The investigation spread faster than wildfire. Families came to collect their loved ones. Some cried. Some shouted. And some, like me, simply watched in silence, grateful to finally be seen. The state shut down Sunny Pines within a week. They promised to relocate every resident safely. When my transfer day came, Grace was there waiting with her car. She helped me pack, though I didn't have much. Just my notebook, a small photo of Daniel as a child, and the old blanket I'd brought from home. As we drove away, I looked at the building through the window. So many tears, So many sleepless nights behind those walls, but also the beginning of my freedom. I moved into a small apartment near the ocean. It wasn't big, but it had sunlight and salt air and peace. Grace lived a few blocks away. Sometimes we'd sit by the pier, sipping tea and watching the waves crash. I had learned something powerful. Sometimes, losing everything brings you closer to yourself. One evening, as I was watering the small plants on my balcony, I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, I froze. Daniel stood there, thinner, paler, eyes sunken with regret. He removed his hat, holding it in his hands like a child waiting for forgiveness. "Mom," he whispered. I didn't know where else to go. I wanted to slam the door. I wanted to scream to tell him he'd destroyed me. But instead, I said, "Come in." He stepped inside, looking around the little apartment. "It's nice," he murmured. "It's mine," I replied. "Every corner of it. Earned by me, again." He nodded, his eyes glassy. "I deserved everything that happened," he said. "I lost my job. Emily left. I've been living with a friend. Until I couldn't anymore." I poured him tea. Silence filled the air between us. Then he finally broke down. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said, tears spilling down his face. "I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. Truly. I was stupid and greedy. And I forgot what really mattered." I looked at him. My son, broken but human again. The anger inside me had long since burned itself out, leaving only ashes. "I believed I lost my son the day you left me at that place," I said softly. "But maybe this is the day I get him back." He looked up, eyes wide. "You forgive me?" I smiled faintly. "Forgiveness isn't a gift for you, Daniel. It's a release for me." He nodded, tears falling freely now. "I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." "Then start," I whispered. He began visiting every week. He helped me fix the leaky faucet, brought groceries, sometimes just sat quietly as I read by the window. He never asked for money, never made excuses. He was just present. One afternoon, he showed me a letter. "I got accepted to volunteer at a senior care program," he said. "They help elders who were abandoned or mistreated. I want to make things right, in any way I can." For the first time in years, I saw a glimmer of the little boy I once knew, the one who used to say, "Mom, I'll take care of you when you're old." And maybe, in his own broken way, he finally was. If you're listening to my story today, I want you to remember this. Sometimes, the ones we love most are the ones who hurt us deepest. But pain can be a teacher. It teaches you who you are when everything is taken from you. It teaches you that even in the darkest places, like that nursing home, a spark of strength still burns quietly inside. And when the people who betrayed you finally regret it, you don't have to destroy them. You just have to rise above them. Because nothing, not age, not betrayal, not even heartbreak, can take away your worth. I still sit by my window some mornings, watching the ocean shimmer. I think of my past, my mistakes, my strength, and I whisper to the wind, "They left me at a nursing home. But I left with my dignity,